Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much. I hope everyone's had their coffee. I'm fully caffeinated, so this could be a little exciting. My name is Jenny Newman. I'm the editor-in-chief of Cars.com.
And I'm Amie Lindas. I'm the Director of Research and Insights at Cars.com. I've been with Cars for over 9 years now, and in my role, I do a lot of different research with consumers and dealers on pretty much everything automotive. And today, Jenny and I are going to walk you through the consumer journey from what triggers a purchase to shopper mindsets, what goes into determining vehicle budgets, and even what features are most sought after among shoppers. Now, for today's presentation, when we break out the data by generation, we're pretty much focusing on Gen Z, Millennials, and Gen X. And please, that's not to say that boomers aren't important here, because they're probably the generation that's most likely to purchase a 911. So they're definitely important, but we really haven't seen a big shift in that shopping journey. I mean, boomers typically have their make model picked out. They've established a relationship with their local dealer. So when they're in market, they call up their local dealer. We're going to be highlighting trends that we see among Gen Z and millennials. So let's dig in.
So I think we all know Gen Z, but let's just talk a little bit, let's get a little more into the details of this generation. They are born between 1997 and 2012, and 2/3 of this generation is between the ages of 18 and 29. That means 1/3 of the generation, they are kids. They are still in their teens, so the youngest among them is 13. And for the purposes of this conversation, obviously we're looking at that older 2/3 of the Gen Zers. So those adults now, they're often in older used vehicles that are prone to mechanical failure. Statistically, they are inexperienced drivers who are more likely to be in accidents. But they're also digital natives. They're the iPhone generation, and they are used to a world in which tech items such as cell phones are frequently updated, right? Often new. And so that new idea is part of their consumer DNA. So for these older Gen Zers, what's interesting is they're now experiencing life events. They're moving out on their own, they're getting married, and they're even starting families. And all of these life events, they can trigger a new vehicle purchase.
Absolutely. So let's dig into those purchase triggers for Gen Z. The top triggers that we see for purchasing a car, they're evenly split among Gen Z, and that's that first tealish colored bar. They're either buying a car because their previous car broke down. And as Jenny mentioned, these are used shoppers. They have lower budgets. So, they're going through a lot of cars in these early stages. The other reason that they're in market is they just wanted something newer. And again, Jenny alluded to that's in their consumer DNA. We also see that Gen Zers are buying their very first car. So over to the right here. Oh boy, I just saw that now. Over to the right, that 18% that you see, that's a first car purchase. This being the younger generation, a lot of Gen Zers are buying their first car. They're 22, 23, they're fresh out of college. Now they have a new job and they're looking for reliable transportation. And this is a really pivotal moment for automakers, because those first car experiences can really shape the consumer's brand loyalty and even dealership loyalty. I mean, Gen Z is looking to dealers to kind of give them some hand-holding, give them some guidance in this first purchase. And if they have a good experience with the dealership, they're going to be a loyal customer.
So let's dig into millennials a little bit. So millennials, they are in the thick of life. Like they are, they're even hitting middle age, which kind of blew my mind, honestly. The oldest of this cohort, they are 44 years old. So with midlife comes the need for an additional vehicle for many of these millennials. They're covering many life events, such as they are getting married, they're growing their families, they're starting families, and for those older millennials, they could even be going through the excitement and frankly being frightened when your teen starts driving, starts getting behind the wheel. So beyond family life, many return to office policies mean that those families that once got by with one car might need two, or if they had two, they might need three. With all of these life events, an additional car goes from a want to a need.
Yeah, and looking at millennial purchase triggers, and I apologize, we'll make sure we send the deck out and you'll see these purchase triggers formatted correctly. But looking at millennials, so that navy blue bar in the middle, we see that the number one reason that they're buying, 25%, they're buying because they want something new. Now, millennials, the youngest millennial is 30, the oldest is 42, 43. So they've likely established themselves in a career, they've built families, and they can start to lean in those more aspirational types of vehicles where, this is kind of that point in their lives where needs start to intertwine with what they actually want. So they're balancing that reliability concerns with a desire for updated technology and safety features, and frankly, something new. So they're also shopping because their previous car broke down or has high mileage. This group is likely on their second, third, even fourth car by now, and they're driving them hard. These are families, so they're commuting, they're road tripping, they're carpooling, all the types of activities that are going to put wear and tear on a vehicle. Okay, now we're going to take a look at purchase triggers by gender. So you can see those a little better on this slide. So we see that the motivators also differ by gender. Men are looking for something new. They lean more towards upgrading their vehicle, while women tend to be driven by a need. So they've had a breakdown and their vehicle was in an accident or it's totaled. And for women, practicality often outweighs aspiration. So you might find this surprising, but when it comes to purchasing vehicles, women tend to be very budget conscious. They're very practical when it comes to their approach in car purchasing. They're buying used vehicles that need to be replaced more often.
And across the generation, we're seeing and hearing similar themes. So we're talking about wanting something newer, replacing a broken down or totaled vehicle, and responding to life events. And those themes follow a prescribed path. So for Gen Z, this is the beginning of their adulthood, and they're starting that journey, buying their first cars or replacing used, less reliable ones. Millennials, they're deeper into their life journey. And so because of that, replacing high mileage vehicles, as Amie mentioned, adding cars to their household and adapting to changing family needs. By gender, men are pursuing a desire for an upgrade, while women, they want something, they're again driven by need because their current car is just not cutting it.
And speaking of millennials and families, our research shows that nearly 7 out of 10 parents say that car seats factored into their last vehicle purchase. More than 7 in 10 said child safety features are very important, that middle chart. 4 in 10 actually brought a car seat to the dealership to test fit it before buying a vehicle. And then all the way to the right, when we asked what mattered most, it wasn't luxury add-ons. It was things like safety and tech features, backup cameras, rear seat alerts, easy to use latch systems, which I know you're going to talk about as well, and enough space to fit multiple car seats in the back.
Yeah, the latch system, it is, for those who don't know, it's a system of lower anchors and top tethers that's supposed to make car seat installation easier. What I will tell you is it's also the reason I became a certified car seat technician many years ago. Early in my career at Cars.com, I started test driving cars, It's very fun. And I also started putting my kids' car seats into these cars, which turned out to be not as fun. It was very frustrating because the system, which was supposed to make it easier, actually wasn't, depending on how the automaker had implemented it. And so that led to our car seat check series, where we evaluate the latch system in every new car that comes into our Chicago-based offices, and we install car seats in them, and we share that information with consumers, and we know it really hits with consumers as well. The good news is I have tested hundreds and hundreds of cars and installed hundreds and hundreds of car seats, and I'm happy to say that automakers have really improved latch access over the years. Of course, there's always room for tweaks, and come find me if you want to know what I think, but this really does matter to parents, because you're not just installing car seats into a vehicle for a year or two. We're talking 6, 8, 10 years, depending on the height and weight of your child. So it really is something that resonates.
Yeah. All right. One more slide. Let's take a look at brand loyalty. Only 17% of shoppers, so that's that bottom navy blue bar, are considered pure brand loyalists. And this is highest among millennials at 22%, who have now had some time to develop those preferences and their brand loyalty. 39% prefer one brand, but will look around at other brands. 22% consider a few brands, and this is highest for Gen Z at 26%, because loyalty hasn't really set in yet for Gen Z. This could be risky for some legacy automakers, but it's also an opportunity, because if you capture them now, you can build that loyalty early. And then finally, we see 21% that are open to all brands. And this is higher among lower income buyers. All right, and now looking into that shopper mindset. So over a third of shoppers know exactly what make and model they want, while over a quarter are driven more by those lifestyle needs. So they might be looking for an SUV with a third row, or they're looking for a pickup truck with really good towing capacity. 19% are budget driven, and 19% are open to any make and model that meets their needs. So parents and millennials are most likely to be driven by lifestyle. And not surprisingly, lower incomes are more likely than any other cohorts to be budget driven.
So speaking of budgets, right, that's where life gets real, because you have your wants, you have your needs, and then you have your budget. And that really can, that can really put a damper sometimes on what you're able to purchase when it comes to a vehicle. One of the things that we're seeing at Cars.com is our affordability focused coverage is one of our most popular content streams in our editorial section. And that is in-market shoppers who are engaging with this content as they search for guidance on the vehicles that will fit their budgets. In a recent Cars.com study, 3 out of 4 parents told us their household spending habits had changed in the past year, and most of them said they're cutting back. I don't think that's a big surprise. Among all car shoppers, more than 4 in 10 set their budget on monthly payment, not total price. And the lower a family's income, the more pronounced this is. For many households, the question isn't what car can I buy, it's what monthly payment can I handle?
Yeah, that's very true. And we see affordability concerns differ by gender. So women who are more budget restricted are more focused on that monthly payment, where men are pretty equally focused on monthly payment and total price. We're gonna talk a lot about affordability because obviously it's an issue, and with things like tariffs, it becomes more of an issue. So we'll talk more about our thoughts on consumer shopping and affordability. So we know that shoppers are typically entering the market with a predetermined budget. And at Cars.com, we really want to make sure that we have the right tools to help shoppers find those cars in their budget. We see that cost transparency, that top bar, is the #1 most important tool to shoppers. So they need to understand that total out the door price. And then monthly payment calculators. So it's really important that we're surfacing these tools and this information prominently within the vehicle details. And again, especially with like added costs associated with tariffs, we want to make sure that we're being as transparent as possible and helping consumers know that out the door price and what fees, what other kinds of additional costs are going to be incurred in that total price.
Yeah, out the door is so critical. And it's something that the editorial experts at Cars.com really do recommend that car shoppers focus on as they are digging into, getting further into the negotiations around a new car. But I think we also have to recognize, my team as well as all of us, today's shoppers, there's just a lot going on. They need to be aware of the effects of higher interest rates on those auto loans, and certainly the longer auto loans and what they could potentially do to a person's financial health. For most shoppers, this means thinking through financing options and those monthly payment calculators, that those can be as influential as MSRP. And for automakers, affordability isn't just about lowering prices. It's really about creating vehicles that hit clear budget tiers, especially the under $30,000 section, but as well $30,000 to $49,000 and $50,000 and above. And just to ground that, remember that the average new car price is now $50,000 plus, right? That's pretty steep. So it's all about financing and trims that really deliver value.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was talking with some dealers a few weeks back, and I noticed that the time to purchase, typically on Cars.com, it's about 60 days. For CPO and used, it had really increased quite a bit, and new had gone down. And I was talking with dealers asking, what I know why new decreased. I mean, that was likely the surge of sales that we saw in March and April.
Right.
So that brought down that total purchase time. But on the used and CPO side, I was curious to hear their perspective on why is this taking longer? And what's interesting is a lot of dealers had said that new shoppers are just getting priced out at the new car prices, and they're going to used, and that's a completely different mindset. For somebody who's traditionally always bought new, to then start the process over and start considering used. And so it's really important that OEMs recognize this and offer some, entry-level trim levels and that price point below 30,000. I mean, there's very few cars that fit in that price point these days, but it's becoming increasingly important.
Yeah, and a lot of those 30,000 new priced new cars are at risk due to tariffs, with a lot of these vehicles being built outside of the US as well. So a lot of pressure there, that's for sure.
Right. And as I mentioned, we have tariffs to factor into the equation among shoppers. So more than half of car shoppers told us that tariffs sped up their buying timeline. And about that same number also said that they're looking more towards American-made vehicles because of tariffs. And that's likely going to have an impact on brand loyalty as we see shoppers seeking out vehicles that are not impacted by tariffs. And even, as I mentioned, those new vehicle shoppers that are opening their searches to used.
And I'm going to put a plug in for something that we do at Cars.com that really stands out from others in the editorial side of the automotive industry, which is our American-Made Index. So 2025 marked the 20th year that we have published the American-Made Index, which is a deep dive into which vehicles are built in the US and impact the economy. And with tariffs coming online earlier this year, we saw our highest traffic to the index in years, and I would almost guess ever, as shoppers flocked to it for guidance as they tried to navigate which vehicle do I really need to move quickly on, and which vehicle do I have a little more time to think through in regards to prices and tariffs that could go up.
Yeah. All right, let's dig into some meat. I know that there's a lot here, but I'll walk you through it in several different slides. So when we ask shoppers, these are car shoppers, in-market shoppers, about the safety and tech features that they're seeking most in their next vehicle, We see on the top, blind spot monitoring, smartphone integration, and automatic emergency braking all rise to the top. In fourth place, there is stolen vehicle tracking software. This can definitely come in handy. Just a few months ago, my daughter's vehicle was stolen. She called the police, and she really wasn't getting anywhere with the police. So she called her Infinity dealer, and the Infinity dealer said, oh yeah, call Infinity, here's a number. She called Infinity. Within minutes, they had the vehicle located. It was about an hour west of where we lived, so we contacted the police there. The police met her, she retrieved the vehicle. So that was amazing. It comes in really handy in the rare case that you would actually need it. But looking at these top 20 features, we're going to explore how these shopper wants differ from recent buyers once they've had some time to experience the vehicle, live in the vehicle. Right now, breaking these down by those demographic subgroups, we see some distinct patterns. So women are putting blind spot monitoring at the very top of their list. Men are leading into the smartphone integration. And both men and women value safety, but the emphasis kind of differs. For women, safety tech features that protect their families is a non-negotiable. Men are gravitating a little bit more towards connectivity and convenience. And when you look at those shoppers with higher incomes, we start to see more luxury features pop. So you have the ventilated seats, heated steering wheels coming in that top 5.
And when we look at features by mass market shoppers versus luxury shoppers, we can see that every feature listed here is more important to luxury shoppers, with smartphone integration topping the luxury shoppers list. Features with the biggest gaps between luxury and mass market shoppers include emergency services integration that Amie was mentioning, parking assist, self-parking, predictive nav, and hands-free driving systems.
Yeah, so all of those are significantly more important to luxury shoppers. But as you can see, every feature more important to luxury shoppers. Okay, so looking at this chart, on the left, we have the shopper must-haves ranked. In the middle, we asked owners that recently bought a car in the past 6 months, which of these features does your vehicle have? Of these features that the vehicle has, which are now game changers for you? And then on the third column, we asked dealers, what are the most in-demand features that shoppers are asking for? And what's interesting here is that we see adaptive cruise control is the #1 game changer among recent buyers. But if you look at the shoppers all the way to the left, that's number 14. And this is because they likely haven't experienced adaptive cruise to know what a game changer it actually is. Dealers are pretty much on par with those first 2 features, blind spot monitoring, smartphone integration, but there are definitely some opportunities for dealerships to be talking up some of these safety features like automatic emergency braking. So we see that is number 18 among dealers, but 3 and 4 among shoppers and owners. And then emergency services integration, number 30 among dealers, but number 8 among shoppers. Also adaptive headlights, that's number 21 among dealers, but 6 and 8 with shoppers and owners. So I think dealers might be underestimating some of the importance of these tech and safety features.
Absolutely, and consumers haven't been in these cars. They're owning their own cars for longer and longer periods of time. So there's a lot of technology here that they aren't going to have experienced. And automakers, as Amie mentioned, they have a real important opportunity to reframe these features in terms of daily value, not just what sounds good on a spec sheet or in an ad campaign, but what makes a commute easier, a road trip safer, and school drop-off less stressful, which good luck with that.
All right, so when we ask dealers if any of these features make vehicles more difficult to sell, we found that 1 in 5 dealers said, no, none of these features are making it more difficult to sell, but 80% did list out some features. So the features that are most likely to make vehicles more difficult to sell include biometric features, driver drowsiness monitoring, and gesture controls. I do have to say, so my last vehicle purchase had gesture controls, and I did not realize that I was such an expressive talker when literally the volume's just getting jacked up. I'm like, oh my gosh. So yeah, that has been disabled.
Yes, with good reason. Okay, so digging into this a little further, and I want to be thoughtful about time because we're coming up on it. We asked dealers if some of the streamlining that automakers have done in terms of removing knobs and leveraging touch screens or voice-activated assistants have made vehicles more difficult to sell. And 3 in 10 said yes. And I think those of us who've experienced it understand that. So, there are some automakers that are the worst offenders. Audi, Volvo, Ford came on the list, so.
Yeah, and we dug into this a little more, asking dealers to give specific examples. And they, time and time again, called out things like removing climate control knobs as a real point of frustration for consumers. Consumers don't want to have to navigate through screens when they can just push a button or turn a knob to change the temperature or turn up the volume. Vehicle owners get accustomed to their dash. They know right where that knob is and can go right to it, whereas on a screen, they've got to take their eyes off the road, look at the screen, find the right screen to change temperature or volume. So that was called out several times by dealers. All right, we're going really quick.
We're going to speed run. Yep.
Yeah. So we're on our last 2 slides. We ask about pain points, frustrations when it comes to car shopping. So that trust gap remains a big hurdle for shoppers, as 43% are citing finding a trustworthy dealer as their #1 pain point when it comes to car shopping. Following that is finding a car within my budget and knowing that I'm getting a good deal on the vehicle purchase. So again, that price transparency becomes more and more important.
And over a third of shoppers are also concerned about getting a lemon, not getting sold a lemon. And this can be related to numerous things: vehicles, reliability, number of recalls, or just that longevity of the vehicle overall.
All right, the good news here is that the majority of shoppers prefer to buy from a franchise dealership. Gen Z, being primarily used shoppers, they have a little bit higher preference for indie dealers compared to other cohorts. Almost a quarter of shoppers prefer to buy from either CarMax or Carvana. And then just 6% prefer private party. So franchise dealerships remain top choice.
And that concludes this morning's presentation. We've shared consumer motivations that drive car purchases and explored the wants and needs of millennials and Gen Xers that can help automakers meet the challenges and opportunities of this market. And thank you so much for your time this morning. We'll check the Whova app for any questions. Thank you.